That was easy. Kathy?
The first thing I want to do is just have Berwin talk a little more about it, but I just wanted to share with all of you that Berwin and I had an opportunity to go to the local cable channel to promote Norco, and it was interesting at best. And I have an amazing photograph in my phone of our mayor getting his makeup on for the TV production. So. He started to say he was getting a haircut, but you can clearly see that they're putting powder on his face. But what I just wanted to share with you is Berwin knows more about it, and he can tell us what dates you can look for us on that cable channel promoting the town we love so much. And then on a little more serious note, I've been getting a lot of emails concerning some of the issues with water pressure up in the hills. And I just was wondering if Bill could give us a little update on what we're doing about that, or what we've learned about the levels. So right now he's, so maybe you want to go back to that later, or you want to wait till Harvey's done, or?
Yeah, Bill, can you answer her questions?
I'm sorry.
Suddenly you have two councilmen asking you questions. I've just been receiving some emails concerning the water pressure issues up in the hills, and I just certainly have not been able to answer them. I was wondering if you could give me a little update in all of us on what's going on up there with that water pressure issue.
Yeah, if you don't mind, indulge me in a few minutes so I can explain kind of the basic premise behind water hydraulics and how our zone pressures work, and then I'll narrow it down to that pretty quickly. Generally, in the water industry, we try to run water pressures from about 40 psi to a maximum of 100 psi to within each zone, and that's based on the elevation of the properties themselves. In Norco, we have 5 hydraulic zones, and most of those zones run from about 40 to 45 psi upward to the highest being about 126 psi. In this area that was discussed initially, it's one of 2 small zones that we have that are not run on what we call floating systems, which are all of the pumps pump to reservoirs, so the maximum pressure you can get is whatever's in that highest reservoir. These systems are run because of their elevation differences between what we call pressure reducing valves. Typically that's done with 1. In our case, we put 3 in this particular zone that we're talking about that started the process. Once I got some additional emails on the pressure problems up in the Norco Ridge Ranch, it became very apparent that they were running between 3 different hydraulic zones, 2 of them of which there was no way to spike the system. And then the third one, there was only 2 items that happened there. And we put those in because if you're familiar with the area where the zone is, at Warm Blood and Breeders' Cup, the elevation is about 1,044 feet above sea level. And at Stable Way, the elevations are about 858 feet above sea level. So simple water hydraulics is you subtract the lower from the higher, and then you multiply by about 0.433, and you get whatever the water pressure is in a perfect world without any losses through valves and everything else. So what that equates to is at Warm Blood, at the top there, it's 46 psi, and then down on Stable Way it's 100 psi, maybe up to 102 in a real good day. That means all the homes in that area fall between those pressures, which is what we run and most agencies run universally. If you're at the top of Crestview, you've got about 20 psi, and then you have to have a pump, and nobody wants to pay high electrical bills for their pumps on top of our water bills. So anyway, that's where we're at there. We went and tested our valves. There were no spikes in the system. We've gone through all 3 of them. We actually have, because we have 3 there's an exhaust. So if the pressure was to get too high on the one inlet side within that zone, the third one would exhaust down to Pedley Avenue and exhaust some of that pressure. And the way these valves work is, if you had one home, and we have about 30 in this area, but if we had one home, there would be, and the pressure dropped 2 pounds, the valve opens up and repressurizes the system up 2 pounds. As soon as it gets to that, whatever limit that was that we started, it shuts back down. So that's where we're at there. Hopefully that makes sense. I mean, I tried to simplify it.
I guess then
So with that explanation, it doesn't really explain to me that the list of houses that have had this water pressure problem and the one that had the flooding. It sounds like our Richard has been out to some of the houses, you know,
Right.
local plumber, and he's saying it's the pressure. So do you think that's...
Well, what happens with pressure is, and I should probably explain this, typically you run between that 45 and 100 psi, and you do that because you want to make sure, you know, if it was a flat ground like in the Midwest and you had an elevated tank and everything was exactly 500 feet above sea level and the tank was 40 feet high, everybody would have 20 psi. But in Norco and most of the areas in Southern California, it's up and down, hill and dale, and that's why you have that 50-pound leeway there is what we try to stay within. What happens with pressure, the reason why in Norco we recommend pressure regulators on all houses, all homes, and all of the new homes in the hills got pressure regulators. We cannot specify the quality of those regulators. We are not guaranteeing the time that they actually last. So with that in mind, if a regulator was to fail and we had 100 psi in the street, you would have 100 psi at the house. If you have it adjusted to 75, then you would have 75 if it's operating correctly. All manufacturers basically try to warranty all of their appliances to about 85 psi. That's the other reason we recommend the regulators. It does not mean that they will only work up to 85 and then they fail at 86. In fact, it's very difficult to buy a fitting anywhere in the world that isn't what they call a class 125 fitting, and that's based on 125 psi, which, if you look at the plumbing codes, that means they are tested to almost 200 psi. And that's universal. In our city, we don't use, in our pipelines, we have no fittings that are less than 150 psi. But for the home, to protect it, we have the regulator there. So what happens past that regulator, that's not our jurisdictional boundary, but what we do know is we control the pressures in the street between hopefully 46 and 100. And when I say that, somebody out in the audience will say, I got 107 in my house. Well, if you happen to be at the bottom, the lowest elevation in an area, you will have a higher pressure than somebody that is a little bit higher up the street than you. Because as you elevate, your pressure reduces.
Okay, so I just guess the end of the day is, my answer is that it has nothing to do with the pressure of the city water.
Well, in this instance, and based on all of the homes that we got notified on, we tested pressures throughout the system. The one that had the flooding was within the area that potentially could have a spike, but we cannot find any reason why it spiked. We had outside engineers come in and test the valves. There was no sign of any spiking whatsoever. Since we have now put recorders on those, so we will have 24-hour recording of what happens in those areas to ensure there's a spike, and ultimately, hopefully by June, I'll actually have a radio signal that will alarm us if there is a spike.
That's the good news. That's the thing I was waiting to hear. Thank you for that ending, that we are taking a proactive report.
But I will say also, because I have this, I'm on a soapbox, and this is very quick. The water quality since 2000, which was prior to those homes being built, on everybody on the east side of the I-15 freeway has received Arlington desalter water, and which is one of the highest quality waters in the nation.
Yeah, I'm aware of that.
Can I jump in? I just had a question.
Sure.
So my understanding is that they've kind of resolved. They pretty much resolved the issues of the pressure. And then the other question I have is that maybe people don't know this, but I mean we don't really have a real acidic water on that side, right?
No, our pH average is 7.8. The pH scale runs from 0 to 14, 7 being neutral. Anything less than 7 would be considered acidic. Anything above would be alkaline or above neutral.
And there's well 15 is one that has the sulfurized water that smells, and that doesn't go over there?
No, well,
But
15.
nevertheless, you should still probably change, so you don't have smelly acidic water. And so, but you should still, every 2 years, change out your line going from your outlet to your toilet, and also your line going from your washer, because those will tend to wear out, and that tends to be where failures happen. Would that be correct?
Well, I think that's a good recommendation from you. I can't recommend that people
No,
do
I'm
that.
just saying.
I think it's a good idea.
The only reason I say that is because the failures were actually, it was those toilet lines that failed.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to make sure that everybody understood, it's not because, in the old days, we did have acidic, smelly water. But that was 1967.
That's true.
And so I just want to make sure that maybe people should know, and especially, unfortunately, up in the hills, they didn't always put some of the best pipelines and stuff. In fact, wasn't there a substandard line, what's it called, a beaded line?
Well, they had a braided line that they have modified and removed from the plumbing code that was in existence up until about 2008.
And some of those are up in those houses and they failed.
They could have been. I mean, we have not verified for sure.
Sorry, I just want to jump in there, Ken.
Can I jump in on that?
You can tell we've all had a lot of emails, so
Well,
it's
there's
great.
one other thing. I mean, everybody has talked to Bill and reacted to the residents' concern. But Bill and I were talking about, and you probably can't recommend, but if you go to Home Depot for $6 and buy a pressure gauge, you'll be able to determine on your outside hose bib what your pressure is coming into the house, and might give you a tip off that you have a defective regulator.
Yes, that's true. We do not use $6 gauges. Ours are actually fluid-filled oil gauges that are,
But we're
calibrated.
looking for budget cuts here, Bill.
Yeah. Okay, well, but we did test the majority of the fire hydrants up in the Norco Ridge, as well as some other areas, and to confirm pressures. I was a little concerned that some of the pressures we got in the emails were a little bit higher than I thought should be there, and our gauges seem to prove that they were, it's not a lot, 10 psi, off, but irregardless of that, I would recommend that all homeowners replace or at least maintain their regulators on their homes because of the manufacturer's warranty towards appliances. And that goes from any appliance, your refrigerator, water, ice maker, to your water heater.
Anything else, Kathy?
No.
Okay.